Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Tuesday evening, the 27th of January 2026. It's always a pleasure to be back here with you guys. I hope you've had a wonderful day. It's been a beautiful day down here in Kampala, Uganda, where I do come to you live from, where it's 18 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. Um, it's been by far a fairly okay day. Not the best of days. Some days are better than others, and by measure, perhaps today was better than yesterday. But yeah, I was glad to be part of a TikTok forum where we're digesting UEFA Champions League and had a very fruitful debate or discussion with some strangers. That's the beauty or funny thing or strange side about social media is that and even the things we get to do here is that we get on here and then strangers lend us their ears and listen to us, and strangers give us their views, their opinions, their you know um and everything that they feel or think about the game, and we digest that. So today is not going to be any different in regards to what our responsibilities are, because we'll be previewing what we expect to come from the UEFA Champions League. That's tomorrow night on Wednesday, because it's the final game, match day 8 of the UEFA Champions League for the league phase, for the league format. So I know it's a competition that many of you enjoy, while us coming on here as trying to keep tabs on that game between Werder Bremen and Hoffenheim, which Hoffenheim have gone into into halftime with a 1-0 lead. Unfortunately, I did not get the chance to watch the goal because I was also setting up for this particular, broadcast. So it is what it is. Anyways, before I even go down any further, allow me to have our audios tested just to be sure everything checks out before we proceed in tonight's conversation. There's some unfortunate news if you're a Newcastle fan, while there could be some positive news as well if you're a Magpies fan, same team. So we'll be looking at that ahead of their fixture in the UEFA Champions League, in which they will be taking on the reigning champions, Paris Saint-Germain. There. Leo Wallen says hi. Hi, Leo. Jin. Okay, I'll only read the first name, Jean. Hi, Jean. Good to have you on the broadcast. For those of you that are just joining us, Robert Kesakos is my name, and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's 20 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. That means 40 minutes to midnight or to Wednesday, depending on where it is that you're joining us from. Do me the absolute honor and favor and like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. And before we get into our discussion tonight, do let me know where you're joining us from. Send your greetings, send your hi. I will be reading you all out. Leo says, I did. Johanna says, hi. Hi, Johanna. Where are you guys joining us from? Do let me know where you're joining us from. What's your favorite sport? What do you like what do you enjoy to talk about most? What takes your time? Let's have a brief chat before we get into the seriousness of whatever it is that we have to discuss tonight. For some people, I know around Europe, it should be around 9 p.m. There, 21 minutes past 9 p.m., depending on what part of Europe you do find yourself in. Leo says, I support Liverpool. Can I donate? Leo, as much as I would appreciate that, unfortunately, because the channel is not monetized, I do not have the means to put up, mechanisms for well-wishers to donate to the channel. So unless you can guide on that, but to the best of my knowledge, I need to monetize first for me to be able to set up those mechanisms where you have memberships and donations and things like that. So yeah, that's the situation. Because we are not yet monetized, we do not have the capability to add those payment mechanisms. But thank you so much for thinking about it, or even putting it into consideration. You say it's 8 o'clock. Okay. Thanks for the point of correction. I think. Oh, are we back to? No. Yeah, you're right, because we are 3 hours ahead now until sometime when it will then shift back to 2 hours that I'm more accustomed to. Anyways, you mean PM? Yeah, 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 I completely understand. 8 p.m. There, that's UK time. You support Liverpool. Are you from the UK itself, or are you from Scotland? Where it is that you are joining? Watching from Denver, Colorado, USA. That's Rodom. Rodom. Hi, Rodom. Good to have you. How is the USA? How is Denver? The the only time I've heard of some of those places was when I was watching X Factor USA, and then of course in recent times what is happening in what's that that state where you have Tim Walz as the governor, where you guys are trying to put ice out and everything that is going on there. Very, very unfortunate scenes. You say no, I'm going to say my exact location, but I'm near Birmingham. Okay, and sorry, not going to say exact location. That's always fine. I not the exact location, but you can always give us a city, maybe a neighborhood, or a general area, even if it's just a country. I'm always good with that. So yeah, I have to state where I am from, Kampala, Uganda. Kampala is the capital city of Uganda, but of course it's a bigger city, or fairly big, with different parts of it. So, anyways, tonight we are here to speak about the UEFA Champions League, because we do have match day 8. That will be the final match day for the group stage or the league format phase, and a lot of games will be played. Unfortunately, contrary to what we are accustomed to, all games will be played tomorrow. All games will be played at the same kickoff time. You're asking where am I from? I said Kampala, Uganda. Maybe let me type it in the comment section for purposes of those that may want to possibly Google the the city and find out more about the Pearl of Africa. So that's where I'm from. Was it Sir Winston Churchill is the one who dubbed us the Pearl of Africa. So yeah, that's the place where I'm from. Small landlocked country, neighboring Kenya, Tanzania, South Sudan in the north, DRC Congo in the East, Kenya in the west, Rwanda in the southwest. Those are our immediate neighbors, in case you've heard of any of those countries. So yeah, like I said, contrary to what we've been accustomed to where UEFA Champions League matches are played on a Tuesday and Wednesday, because it's the final day, match day, which is match day 8, all games will be played at the same kickoff time, which will be 11 p.m. East African time, meaning it will be 8 o'clock. That's UK time or European time for majority of the European countries. Of course, with the exclusion of Russia, where you have multiple time zones within the same country. Who do you support? Leo, I do support football. Football is number one for me. And then I break it down to, then I pay allegiance to Arsenal, to Real Madrid. Those are my teams. But football comes first before anything else, before even my own allegiance to any of those respective countries, clubs. And then, of course, I pay respects to the Brazilian national team, given the fact that Uganda is never at the World Cup. Teams I meant. Yeah, I understand. The reason that's why I put it out first, that the reason that's why I say football first is so that because usually when you tell people the team you support, they come with a certain level of prejudice or sort of bias that maybe when it comes to a time for you to speak about that team, they think you're going to be biased because you support another team. So I put that out first so that people disabuse themselves of whatever prejudice they may carry once I mention the team that I do support. Muhammad Meoz says, hello, I'm from Pakistan. Love you. Thank you so much, Muhammad. Good to have you on the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. How is Pakistan? The last time I checked about Pakistan, the former Prime Minister Imran Khan was still in jail. Some of his fans were protesting that and things like that. I do not know much about Pakistan beyond their love for cricket and a little bit of their politics. But yeah, much love from Uganda to you, Pakistanis, and thank you so much for the love and support. You say I like YouTube channel. Thank you so much. No response. Dear, please reply. I've responded. I'm from Kampala, Uganda. I've put it in the comment section for those of you that are continuously asking. Let me see. Let me try to pin it. Let me pin it so that people can easily find it when it comes to that. Do you know Mr. Beast? Mr. Beast? Yeah. The biggest YouTuber has, millions, I think more than 300 million subscribers. One of the best there is. Very good at what he does. Okay, I've responded to that comment in regards to where I'm from. Muhammad, any team you support? In terms of football. So, when it comes to match day 8, here's the run through of fixtures that will be coming your way on that's tomorrow night. Like I said, 8 o'clock UK time or 11 p.m. East African time. In case you're wondering, for other localities, I may not be too particular, but you can try and check your clock. You said please visit Pakistan. If I ever get the chance to, thanks so much for the invitation. But if I ever build up the mechanisms and the ability to travel, I would love to go such places. Your neighbors in India are some of the people that have, supported this channel a great deal, even though many of them are not the biggest of football fans. Majority of them love their cricket, just like Pakistanis, just like people from Bangladesh, West Indies, and others. But I do appreciate the love, and they've extended invitations to me to visit their countries. Unfortunately, at the moment, I do not have the means, particularly the financial means, to honor those invitations. But hopefully, with time, one time, we'll be able to honor those invitations. Okay, you said, but stay in my home. That's all right. I know when I talk about financial means, it goes beyond just where I'll sleep. But you know the logistics of traveling. In any case, I've never left my country, by the way, to go to another country, not even the neighboring countries of Kenya, Tanzania, or Rwanda. I've only been to Uganda. To the farthest of places in Uganda, I've traveled, but I've never had to leave the country. So yeah, anyways, that's it at that. So here's the run of fixtures that will be coming your way tomorrow night. Athletic Bilbao will be playing up against Sporting CP. We know Sporting CP beat up against the reigning champions, Paris Saint-Germain, by 2-1 in their last fixture. Liverpool will be up against Karabakh. Karabakh has been one of those stubborn teams. They led to the sacking of Bruno Lage at Benfica when they came from 2 goals down to beat up against Benfica by 3-2 on match day 1. So before he was replaced by Jose Mario Felix Mourinho. Then Barcelona will be up against Copenhagen. Monaco will be up against Juventus. Ajax will take on Olympiacos. PSG will take on Newcastle. Dortmund will be up against the losing finalists of 2025 in Inter Milan. Napoli will take on Chelsea. Napoli are the reigning champions of the Italian Serie A. Really, in the weekend, they got smashed by Juventus by 3-0. Eintracht Frankfurt will take on Tottenham Hotspur. Atletico de Madrid will be up against Bodo Glimt, while Bayer Leverkusen will take on Villarreal. Arsenal will take on Kairat Almaty. Pafos will take on Slavia Praha, while Manchester City will entertain Victor Osimhen's Galatasaray. Marseille will be away to Club Brugge, while Real Madrid will play away to Portugal against Benfica. That means Alvaro Carreras will be up against his former side, while Jose Mourinho will be commanding Benfica against his former club, Real Madrid. We all know he managed them after parting ways with Inter Milan when they won the UEFA Champions League title in 2010 after beating Bayern Munich at the finals there. Then Union St. Gilloise will be up against Atlanta, while PSV will be up against Bayern Munich. Pressing Kosi says, I've been to your country, Kampala, to be precise. Wow, that's interesting. Thank you so much for visiting Kampala, for whatever the reason it was that you are visiting. I'll invite you, self-payment. I invited to my pocket money. Okay, we'll see about that. Come to South Africa, hopefully one day. South Africa is one of those places that that is literally on my bucket list. Leo says I'll pay for your flights. South Africa, particularly, I would want to visit Cape Town, Johannesburg. I don't know if I can visit there's so many interesting places in South Africa. They have beautiful game parks, as we do here in Uganda. But there's something about the maybe visit Durban, one of the hottest places I saw here during the summer, and things like that. So thank you so much for the invitation. Wow, the comments are a lot today. Money coming in for Mr. Tribe. Is this way? Not yet, Pedri. We are not yet there, but hopefully I will get. Kairati is Kairat Almaty. Pedri, you'll give the you'll excuse me on that one. I don't know if you are able to listen into. I managed to land on a clip where Christian Norgard was being accused of by a journalist, not in any bad breath or regard, on how he gave two pronunciations of his name, one contrary this season to the one he had given to the season earlier. And then he gave the pronunciation of his name in English, and then he gave it in the Norwegian way. So my pronunciation of some of these words or some of these teams or some of the names are tailored to my own accent, which is the Ugandan accent. So please do excuse if I do not perfect any of them on that. Then how many teams will you be going? How many teams will be going through? What happens to the rest? The top 8 are qualified directly to the round of 16. Then those that finish between 9th and 24th go into a playoff in which we determine the next group of 8 that combine with the very top 8 to form the round of 16, while the bottom 8, that's from 25th to 36, those are sent home packing immediately. Then Pedri, you say Christian Norgo or Christian Norgard. Exactly the way you tried to put it across. When he became famous, he wanted people to say his name right when he joined Arsenal. Okay, so anyways, it is what it is. I'm sure if, for example, assuming if I gave you to pronounce a Ugandan name, a local Ugandan name, for example, we have a colleague here from Uganda calling himself Okoyo Amlin. So if I gave you to read Okoyo, your pronunciation or your enunciation of that name could be quite contrary or slightly different from what we're accustomed to. So it basically boils down to that. For example, I was watching what's her name? The lady that works with Thierry Henry, Jamie Carragher, and Mika Richards on CBS Sport. Kate, is it Katie something? And she was, I think, educating those guys about the pronunciation of Union Berlin. We used to pronounce it Union Berlin, and she said it's Union Berlin. Union. Yes, Kate Abdo. Yes, thanks for the correction. And so they keep correcting each other depending on the context of culture and language like that. So do please excuse me. Anyways, in the preview for these particular games, guys, what are your thoughts? What are the teams that you do expect to advance? First of all, I want your predictions for these games. I will go one by one. PSG versus Newcastle, and then Chelsea Napoli. We'll take a set of 2-2. You give me your predictions as we try to digest those two games. So Chelsea versus Napoli. I do not know for whatever reason. I don't know if it's a curse. I don't know if it's bad luck. I do not know what's the relationship. What's the bad relationship between Antonio Conte and UEFA Champions League football? I really like CBS Sport. Their chats are very interesting. Yeah, indeed, they're very, very interesting. I remember last season when they were making fun of Brest, the team from France. Anyways, so there's something about Mr. Tribe. Write down our predictions. Oh, I didn't know we were starting with Champions League predictions. I thought we were starting with the weekend predictions. Let's play game week 8. All right. Okay, you've given me quite the task, but what I will do is should I take note? Because if I keep typing, then I may lose I may lose track. I may lose track in overlooking at the screen as opposed to addressing you guys. So anyways, like I was saying, I do not know what the bad luck there is between Antonio Conte and UEFA Champions League football, because he seems to never get it right. He's been part of very good teams. Of course, go back to his days at Juventus when I think he won was it three or more Scudettos, and still could not hack it in the UEFA Champions League. I think it took the coming in of Massimiliano Allegri to guide them to the finals of the UEFA Champions League. I think that was 2015. They lost to Barcelona 3-1. Then 2017, I think they lost to Real Madrid. So, but that was Massimiliano Allegri. Now, but Antonio Conte, no matter how good a team he's had, he's always struggled through UEFA Champions League football. We know he had a good stint with Inter Milan, won them the Scudetto. He came to Chelsea, he won them a Premier League title, and yet still in the UEFA Champions League he had his struggles. That has gone on at Napoli. As we speak, I think in the last 6 games across all competitions, they've only won one fixture, and that was a 1-0 victory, I think, against Sassuolo, while over the weekend they got beat by 3-0 against Juventus. Then when you look at some of the other results, match day 7 of the UEFA Champions League, they shared the spoils with Copenhagen in a 1-1 draw. Really, Copenhagen were down to 10 men. So you would have anticipated or thought that given that Copenhagen were down to 10 men, Napoli took the lead, they should have gone on to win that game, but that wasn't the case. They've had a 2-2 draw against Chievo Verona. They've had a 2-2 draw against Inter Milan, a goalless draw against Parma. So really, so many draws in there, and their only win against Sassuolo. And then they do not lose too many games. You'll give it to them. They do not lose too many games, but they draw a little one too many games. And as we speak in the Italian Serie A, they seem to have dropped now to 4th place following that defeat at the hands of Juventus over the weekend, with Inter Milan still at the summit of the standings following, I think, their victory. Was it 6-2 against Pisa? That was it on Friday, and then all the other fixtures. So Napoli do have a good team. When you look at them, they do have a decent team on paper. They have some reliable players like Scott McTominay, Lobotka, Rasmus Højlund. Of course, they missed Kevin De Bruyne through injury, but players like Spinazzola, Di Lorenzo, these are really, really good players. And yet, in the UEFA Champions League, they've not lived to the expectations, and on the other side, you have a Chelsea team who are going through a new manager bounce following the sacking of Enzo Maresca and the incoming of Liam Rafinha, the son to Leroy Rafinha, who also played some good football in English football. So Chelsea have sort of started to find some bit of balance. Joao Pedro seems to have picked up his form again. Moises Caicedo is looking less prone to the so many mistakes he's been making recently because of the way they were applying themselves, which oftentimes left him exposed in that midfield, sort of isolated in a way similar to the way you have Casemiro when he was getting isolated in that midfield when they were playing under Ruben Amorim. And yet now, because Liam Rafinha is very familiar with Andre Santos. He's played him in that 8 role. Then you do have a player in Enzo Fernandez, one of the most dynamic midfielders Chelsea have. He can play as a 6, can play as an 8, he can play as a 10. He can play that box-to-box kind of role for you, depending on how you want to deploy him and how you deploy him. His goal contributions are as good as, even better than some of the forward players that you do have, not just at Chelsea, but even among other big clubs. So I've said this before, that Chelsea, when you look at the core of their starting 11, if provided all players are fit, they do have one of the best starting 11s. Unfortunately for them, when it comes to their forward players, things have not yet clicked. Because many of them are young, they sort of on and off form. When you look at players like Alejandro Garnacho, Joao Pedro, who is not young, but he's is never very consistent. When you look at players like William Estaval, Jamie Gittens, when he's called upon, they have all that. Even if once in a while they will call on to Tariq George, Liam Delap is yet to find his footing. He's suffered, I think 2 injuries so far during the course of this season that have kept him out of action for a period of no less than a month, respectively. So really, it's been a bit of a struggle for some of those players. But if all players were available and all players are played in their right positions, let's say you have a Wesley Fofana alongside the Levi Colwill, a Marco Correa, and then a Richie James at right back with, Robert Sanchez in goal. Then, because, I don't know, he seemed to have a preference of Philippe Jorgensen. That's for Liam Rasinha. But you look at that midfield, Moises Caicedo alongside Enzo Fernandez, with Cole Palmer ahead of them, and then Joao Pedro, then Pedro Neto and Alejandro Garnacho or William Estaval, depending on who starts. They can be one of the best teams that you have in Europe who can beat up against any opponent. So they do have capability within that team whose credentials you cannot really question. It's going to be a huge test for Liam Rasinha because any game away in the UEFA Champions League is always a test for any manager or for any team, no matter how good you may come off. Napoli have been far from convincing. They have a lot at stake coming into this particular fixture, given where they do find themselves on that table because they are outside the playoff places. They find themselves 25th on the Premier League, on the UEFA Champions League standings. Really, Chelsea would want to seal that top 8 finish and finish in the top 8 and avoid having to play the playoffs. I've said this before, or I said this in the morning, and I'll repeat it again. For any team that is still playing, that still has domestic competition or domestic cup responsibilities, the last thing you'd want is to be entangled in a playoff, because then that means it adds 2 fixtures to your already congested schedule. I gave the example of Chelsea, who have a return leg, I think on the 3rd of February against Arsenal in the EFL semi-finals. They've had a busy schedule with the UEFA Champions League, with the Premier League, the FA Cup, and things like that. So that for as long as you proceed in those respective competitions, then you're bound to have a congested fixture. So you finishing within those playoff places between 9th and 24th, that means you add 2 extra fixtures to your calendar, which is what majority of these teams are going to be trying to avoid. But then also there is the monetary value attached to where you finish on that table. Mr. Tribe, do you want me to call you Mr. Tribe or something else? And also, what is the prediction for Napoli Chelsea? So, all right. Before I get to the prediction, I wanted to give you my overview of that game. Pedri, I do not mind whether you call me Mr. Tribe, whether you call me Robert, whichever you find easy. Whichever you find easy. Tribe is the brand name. Robert is the actual name. So whichever you're comfortable with. So Pedri, you say it will be Napoli 2, Chelsea 2. I need to take note of Pedri, of his prediction. He says Napoli 2, Chelsea 2. So let's see if that will be the reality of this. For whoever wants to participate in these predictions, just say you want to participate and I'll take note of your name. At the end of match day 8, we'll be back to review our performance in these predictions. So I went for Chelsea to edge this one and win away in Naples by 2-1. That's my prediction for Chelsea to win this game by 2-1. So really, unless otherwise, but Napoli have hardly been good during the course of the UEFA Champions League, and that's why they only have 2 wins, 2 draws. They have 3 losses in those 7 games. But like I said, there's a lot at stake for all these teams. Then quickly, the other fixture that I said we should be looking at is the fixture between 6th place and 7th place. That's the reigning champions in Paris Saint-Germain versus Newcastle. Newcastle, one of the other Premier League teams that are within the top 8, because the Premier League has about 4 teams in the top 8, I think. Yes. And then actually 5 teams, because they have Arsenal, have Liverpool, Tottenham, Newcastle, and Chelsea. It's only Man City that are out of it. And perhaps that, in a way, speaks to how improved their performances have been in terms of the UEFA Champions League. Whether they can see it through to go to higher levels or stages of the competition, that remains to be seen. But yes, PSG versus Newcastle. First of all, it's a game. Give me your prediction still in the comment section. It's a game at home for for Paris Saint-Germain. And while as much as we've come to enjoy PSG, as much as we enjoyed them last season, I must be honest that for the little bits that have followed of them this season, they've not been as good as they were last season. And part of the reason for that has been everything to do with injuries. Injuries have caused a bit of a disruption for them, and not just injuries. Of course, they had some changes in their playing staff, particularly with the goalkeeping position. You remember last season they had Gianluigi Donnarumma, and they replaced him with Lucas Chavalia. I hope that's how the name is pronounced. And then of course, constantly that midfield has been with. You remember the midfield trio that we are very accustomed to of Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, and Joao Neves. This time around, you've had it being fitted with a Warren Zaire-Emery. You've had a Seni Mayuru play there in the game against Sporting CP. It was Fabian Ruiz, Vitinha, and Seni Mayuru who played in that midfield. Then we're accustomed to the forward line of Desile Doué, Ousmane Dembele, and Kivija Kvaratskhelia. Because of injuries, some of these players have since returned back from injury, and we saw Ousmane Dembele and Desile Doué in the previous fixture, who played alongside Bradley Bacola, but without Kivija Kvaratskhelia. But we know that Ousmane Dembele hasn't been as good as he was last season, nor has been Desile Doué, partly due to injuries. Then in that back line where you have Willian Pacho and Marquinhos, sometimes it's been Willian Pacho, and Ilya Zabani, and things like that. So then at right back, they played that Warren Zaire-Emery in the absence of Achraf Hakimi. I remember he got that nasty injury for the hard tackle by Luis Diaz in their 2-1 loss against Bayern Munich sometime back in the UEFA Champions League. So you say PSG will win 2-1. The thing that makes the two games above hard to predict is that all four teams, Napoli, Chelsea, PSG, Newcastle, have something to play for. So it makes it harder. Indeed, those games are really, really hard to predict because of what is at stake for both teams. Sorry, for all those teams. Now, when you look at PSG and Newcastle, a loss for any of them could mean possibly finishing out of the top 8, and even a draw itself does not guarantee any of them finishing within the top 8, because you have a host of teams that have 13 points. That's of course, PSG, Newcastle included. But besides those two, you have Chelsea, you have Barcelona, you have Sporting CP, you have Manchester City, you have Atletico de Madrid, you have Atlanta. All those are teams that have 13 points, meaning if any of those teams win, then they go above you. Then also Juventus and Inter Milan, who have 12 points, if they do win and you draw, that means you finish at 14 points. And if those two teams win, they finish at 15 points. That means, going above you in the standing. So there will be a lot at stake for both teams. So PSG this season, even though they managed to regain their spot, I think at the summit of the French League One standings, they've been far from impressive as opposed to what they were last season. But also last season, we ought to remember that even in this particular competition, they sort of grew through it. They finished in the playoff places. They had to play Brest before advancing to the round of 16, where they met Liverpool and they knocked them out on penalties. And then subsequently, they met Aston Villa, who they got better off. Subsequently, Arsenal, before reaching the final, in which they beat Inter Milan and won the title. I think that this year's UEFA Champions League game week 8 is way more exciting. It has 8 teams all with 13 points. Exactly. So you can imagine. And there's only, actually, I said all teams, besides the top two, when you start from the third place to the 13th place team, all those teams have a lot to play for. Even Real Madrid are not guaranteed of finishing third if they cannot go away to Benfica and win that game of football. So there's a lot at stake for all those teams, and just as much as there is for teams below them. And even when you go for those teams, or when you look at some of those teams that are outside the top 24, they still have something to play for. Napoli has something to play for. Copenhagen, who take on Barcelona, have something to play for. Club Brugge, Bodo Glimt, Benfica, Pafos, Union St. Clovis, Ajax. If they do win their games and hope that those above them are somewhere between 19th place and 24th place slip up, then they can sort of, move up, the table, depending on how many goals they score and things like that. So there's really, really a lot at stake for majority of these teams. And you couldn't be more right there, Pedri, on that submission. So it's going to be really, really interesting. So, so like I said, PSG have not been very, very convincing. Yes, they've not lost too many. They've only lost 2 games against Sporting CP and against Bayern Munich, 2 goals to 1 in either fixture. Newcastle have also lost, I think, only 2 games. They lost to Barcelona by 2 goals to 0. I do not remember the other team that beat them. I think it was Olympique Marseille who beat them by 2 goals to 1. I stand to be corrected, but I think that was the team that beat them. So they've done fairly well, Newcastle themselves, in the UEFA Champions League this season. So unfortunately for Newcastle, their Brazilian international in Jolinton is set to miss out on this fixture and will be out for a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, Bruno Guimaraes, who missed a game, their weekend game in the 2-0 loss against Aston Villa, will require a late fitness test to determine whether he can take part in this particular game. So that means if those two are to be absent, the only regular starter in that Newcastle midfield left will be Sandro Tonali. So that means they could look to players like Joe Willock to start in that midfield. Who do they play in that anchoring role? I do not know, but we'll have to wait and see, depending on how things go for them in as far as tomorrow is concerned. But it's a very, very big fixture. Nonetheless, I do expect PSG to overcome Newcastle and get the better of them and win that game by 3 goals to 1. So that's my prediction, 3 goals to 1 for them. So it could be Louis Miley, Joe Willock, and Sandro Tonali playing in that midfield. Then Newcastle's forward line hasn't been as hot as we would hoped it would be, with the likes of Anthony Gordon, Harvey Barnes, Johan Wissa, Nick Voltmada. Anthony Langa is not gelled very well with that team ever since joining from Nottingham Forest and things like that. So I'm going for a 3-1 win for PSG to win that game. Pedro, you say that PSG will win by 2 goals to 1 against Newcastle. That's your prediction. So let's move on to the other set of 2 games quickly in as far as this preview is concerned. Okay, Barcelona versus Copenhagen is on the menu for our next game, as well as the game between Inter Milan and Borussia Dortmund. Those are the 2 games that I want us to predict next for this particular fixture. For this particular edition of the UEFA Champions League. So, Pedri, there you go. Dortmund versus Inter Milan, Barcelona, Copenhagen. We'll start with Barcelona. I said this in the morning and I'll repeat it again. I've not been very impressed with Barcelona in the UEFA Champions League this campaign. Their loss against Chelsea looked very abysmal. They lost by 3 goals to 0. That 3-3 draw against Club Brugge did not paint them in any form of glory. We saw that against Slavia Praha, it was not a walk in the path. a walk in the park, even though they managed to win that game by 4 goals to 2. Pedro, you say both Voltmada and Wissa deserve to play as a starter for their clubs. Newcastle should have only signed one of them, and then a low-profile striker like Calvert-Lewin. Maybe I feel bad for both. Unfortunately, first of all, Yohan Wissa is what, 28? Nick Voltmada is 23. Now, while they both deserve to start, again, it worked to their advantage that they signed both players, because as soon as they signed Yohan Wissa, he was out with an injury for a period of close on to almost 4 months. So really, it only worked to their advantage that they had an alternative in Nick Voltmada. Otherwise, they would have to rely on a William Osula, who is unreliable, really. So that's where they do sit. So which one is first? Barcelona versus Copenhagen. That's the game we're looking at first. Your prediction. Like I was saying, Barcelona, really, they've been good. I do not think they've been good enough. I mean, we're talking about Barcelona, and they're not in the top 8. I mean, I'm sure Barcelona fans will agree with me that the standards, the expectations for Barcelona going into every UEFA Champions League season is to compete and win the accolade, not just to participate. By measure of their own standards, so far this season, you could say they've so far participated. At one point, they were 15th on that table, and had it not been that victory over Slavia Praha by 4 goals to 2 that lifted them to 9th place, we could be having a totally different conversation by now. Now, like I said, those 2 losses are to Chelsea. The other loss came against who? Pedri, kindly remind me the other loss for Barcelona in the UEFA Champions League this season, who they lost to. I struggle to remember. But they're very vulnerable to conceding so many goals. That's my reservation with Barcelona. However, the counter to that is they score so many goals as well. This season, they're not the highest scoring team, but at least they are one of the highest scoring teams with 18 goals. Unfortunately, they've conceded 13. So that tells you how leaky their backline is. And if you give it a good go, you can get in behind them and score some goals. They play with that style where they want to set they play with a very high defensive line, try and set for you an offside trap, which a good number of teams can, manage to sort of beat and get in behind them. That's what practically Chelsea did, and put 3 past them, even though Barcelona had to play to complete that game with the manless following the sending off of Ronald Araujo. Yes, you lost to Chelsea and PSG. Thank you so much for that addition. Club Brugge was 3-3. That was the only draw. So for anybody that watched the game against Club Brugge, you really, really felt concerned for Barcelona. For anybody that watched the game against Chelsea, you really felt concerned for Barcelona. Against PSG, I can't blame them that much. We know that you cannot win every game. That's understandable. But when you look at how they competed versus Chelsea, they were really, really lacking. They were really lacking, in my opinion. So the advantage for Barcelona is it's a home fixture at the Camp Nou. Their plethora of fans will be behind them, to chant them through that game. Nonetheless, it won't make them any easy. Like I said, they come up against a side who, regardless of being down to 10 men, still managed to hold Napoli to a 1-1 draw in their previous fixture. They equally have something to play for when it comes to this game. Like I said, they are 26th on the UEFA Champions League table with 8 points. So that means a victory for them leaves them at 11 points, which possibly puts them in those playoff places. And then all they need is a victory. For Barcelona, they want to fight and go to 16 points with a victory and possibly finish within the top 8. So that's the objective. So it will boil down to who wants it more. In terms of pedigree, we cannot compare Copenhagen to Barcelona. We're talking about a team that played up to the semi-finals last season and got knocked out at the hands of Inter Milan by 7-6 on aggregate. So really, they score so many goals, create so many goal scoring chances. In terms of team news, I'm not Privy, maybe Pedri, you can bring us up to speed. Do you think for how long is Pedri expected to be out, or is he back in the squad to feature for the mighty Barcelona? Otherwise, it will have to be Frankie De Jong in that midfield alongside Marc Casado to start for Hansi Flick, and then we see who else they add on, or maybe Eric Garcia. By the way, isn't Frank? No, I don't think he's suspended. I don't think he's suspended. Oh, apparently Frankie De Jong could be suspended. Could be. Dragon Fire Patrick says hi. Hi, Dragon Fire Patrick. Good to have you on the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also if it's your first time here, please consider subscribing to the channel. So anyways, whichever way they set up, you expect Joan Garcia in goal, Pau Kubasi, Gerard Martin, Balde, Jules Koundé, Marc Casado. If Frankie De Jong is suspended, then it could be Eric Garcia that he plays alongside within that midfield, Fermin Lopez or Dani Olmo, Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, Robert Lewandowski, depending on how Hansi Flick decides to set up his team. But you say your prediction is Barcelona 4-0 Copenhagen. You're going to see a different Balgrana tomorrow. I feel ashamed of my team. I feel ashamed of my team this season in the UEFA Champions League. I expect my team to be amongst the front runners, not waiting until last game week. Then you say you lost. Okay, all right. So really, I mean, of course, yeah, that's the expectation. So you're going Barcelona to win 4-0 against Copenhagen. I think Barcelona can win that game by 3-2. I'll go 3-2 Barcelona. So you're saying Barcelona. Remember, I'm trying to take note of your predictions. Barcelona for Copenhagen 0. I'm going for Barcelona 3-2 win. So that's my prediction. Anyways, so yeah, the other game is the game between Borussia Dortmund and Inter Milan. That's the next game that we are looking at. Pedri is out for about a month. Frankie is suspended for this game. Yeah, he's accumulated, I think, 3 yellow cards. He's got a yellow card. He got a yellow card versus Slavia Praha. All right. I love Frankie. So do I. Frankie De Jong, very, very effective player. Goes about his business quite quietly. He has those quick turns that he does when he's on the ball that I really, really fancy there. Anyways, Borussia Dortmund versus Inter Milan. Again, these ones are equally neck to neck in terms of the UEFA Champions League standings. They are not far apart. Dortmund are 16th on that log with 11 points. Inter Milan are just a point ahead in 14th place. So at the Signal Iduna Park, in front of that loud noise, chants and cheers from the Dortmund fans. The one thing I like about the Dortmund fans is that regardless of whether they are winning or losing, they will keep chanting their team on. They'll keep cheering their team on. Something that is not very common to find elsewhere. For some teams, once they go a goal down, it tends to become dull. It tends to become dull a bit. But, those guys never shut up, for lack of a better word. They do cheer their team on from the first minute to the very last. So Dortmund themselves haven't been so convincing. Niko Kovac with his team, sometimes I've seen them rely on an aging Julian Brandt. Job Bellingham has maybe not lived to the bidding. Maybe that's not the right word to use. Maybe maybe we had very high expectations of him that he's not yet met. But those are the kinds of players that you do expect. Of course, Saul Girassi to lead the lines, the likes of Karim Adeyemi, Maximilian Bia. This one, very, very good bowler, by the way, there in Maximilian Bia. So we'll have to wait and see. Pedro, you say, for me, if my team is losing, you won't see the nice me, you won't see the nice Pedri, I can guarantee. I understand. Emotions of the game get the better of us. And it's hard to find the composure sometimes to cheer your team on. I've seen it very, very common with the Uganda Cranes. Every time Uganda Cranes go a goal behind, the Uganda Cranes fans in Nambole, you literally go mute. They go mute. Their faces frown. They look disappointed. They look like they're at a funeral. And I'm thinking to myself, it's a game of football. You ought to find a way to sort of cheer your team on, to inspire them, But it is what it is. So on the other side, of course, we know that both teams do come into match day 8 on the back of losses. Dortmund lost by 2-0 against Tottenham Hotspur. They had to play that game with Mendes for a red card. Then Inter Milan got smashed by Arsenal by 3-1. So we'll wait to see how Christian Chivu assembles his team at the Jan Somers, the Francesco Acerbi, the Alessandro Bastoni, Manela Kanji, or Yannick Besic, depending on who chooses to go with in his back three. Federico Di Marco, Henrik Mkhitaryan, Pietro Zelinski, Sushik, who scored against Arsenal, Luis Enrique, who came close to scoring in that game, Marcus Thuram, this one did not start their game against Pisa. Lautaro Martinez, who did not have a good game against Arsenal. Hopefully, they will rise to the occasion because on Friday they beat up against Pisa, I think by 6-2. Last I checked on the fixture. You say, but I forget the next day because I watch football to be happy, not worth my stress or any extra issue in my life. I remember one Barcelona fan died of extreme blood pressure after we lost to Sociedad. Oh, wow, that was very, very unfortunate. Yeah, there have been those cases of fans committing suicide, fans literally losing their nuts, their head of heels, people trying to get drunk just to forget their loss. So football is a very passionate game. Fans are very, very emotionally vested in their respective teams, and I think we all are emotionally invested in our respective teams. What varies is the degree of emotional investment and how far we take things. I remember we were having a chat in the aftermath of Arsenal's loss over the weekend to Man United, and you were asking me how I was, and I was telling you how I perceive things. That when we lose a game, as hurting as it is, I try to quickly move on to find the whys we lost the game, to try and understand that and find the things that we should have done better for us to gain the advantage or to win that game. So in me doing that, it's sort of I put the emotions out of it and then bring logic to the table, or that bit of objectivity to try and understand the game at that sort of level. So you say it was crazy. This is why I forget the next day, move on to the next game. Now, unfortunately, sometimes for some fans, the next game doesn't come as quick, So just assume for a second that the other week before you played Slavia Praha, after losing to Sociedad, you did not have a midweek game. So that means you have to wait an entire week to watch your team again and see if it wins or loses, So that longevity there can be a factor, I'm sure. For Manchester United fans who already are still, basking in their victory over Arsenal, they would want to rewatch that game all throughout the week. Whereas Arsenal fans want to quickly forget that, put it behind them and move on to the next fixture. And good enough for them, they have a fixture against Kairat Almaty. So, Pedri, your prediction for the Inter Milan versus Dortmund game, what is your prediction? So, that is, for me, what I do expect. That midfield contestation, that midfield congestion of Inter Milan, they can be very, very good with their counter press and very, very effective going forward. The Italian teams, some of the teams that are very, very good when it comes to playing with the back three, it's an art that they've sort of mastered in a way. We know that Antonio Conte loves that style. You say the time where it hurts the most when we lose the game before an international break it would be awful thinking about that loss the entire 2 weeks. Exactly. Exactly. It always feels like extended agony, in a way. It feels like you're going to mourn forever. And yeah, it's not a good place to be at, losing before the international break. In any case, no loss is a good loss, really. So you can imagine the agony of losing a final and things like that. So anyways, I've been at the end of that this season already, losing to Barcelona of all teams, as a Real Madrid fan of all teams. Jesus Christ, of all teams. I could not even run back to take consolation in the 2-1 victory in the Spanish La Liga earlier than that, because I just wanted us to win something, to get one over Hansi Flick in terms of an actual trophy. But, it is what it is. It is what it is. Okay. You say the time where, okay. No, sorry. You say your prediction is 1-1. You have changed from a 3-2 victory for Inter Milan, so you've gone for a 1-1 draw between the two sides. Okay, not a bad one. But like you said at the start of these predictions, all these games are difficult. None of them is easy to predict, really. None of them is easy to predict. So come on. I don't know. Even when Dortmund are at home, for some reason I have this sneaky feeling, this gut feeling that Inter Milan hold the advantage in a way, because defensively they can be very, very good, even though Arsenal poked holes in them. So I'm going to go 2-1 Inter Milan. Yep, I'll die on that horse. So you've said Dortmund 1, Inter 1. That's your prediction. I've gone for Inter to win 2-1. I don't know. For some reason, I do not anticipate so many draws. I anticipate teams to be desperate to try and win it, because there's so many teams that have a lot at stake, and that there are very few teams that have nothing to play for. Unless you're a Villarreal, unless you're a Kairati Almaty, on those, standings. So unless you're a Slavia Praha, unless you're an Eintracht Frankfurt, those bottom 4 teams, they are the only teams with nothing to play for. You say, so I had to change it. I understand, completely understand. So anyways, there's that. Let's look at another maybe 1-2 games before we wrap it up for tonight. We'll pick up the slack in the morning for our morning broadcast. Our next game is Manchester City versus Galatasaray for the predictions. Manchester City versus Galatasaray, and then Real Madrid away to Benfica. So those are the 2 games that we are looking at next before we wrap up tonight's conversation. We'll pick up the slack from where we would have wherever we shall leave it off in tomorrow morning's broadcast. Ceteris paribus, provided all factors are kept constant. Yeah, I know some bit of Latin from my economics class. Is it even a Latin word? I hope it is. Ceteris paribus. You say, I remember last year. Sorry, you said, I remembered my hate for Inter, so I wanted them to play. I want them to play playoff after what they did to us last year. Oh, Jesus Christ, Pedri, come on, you're better than that. If that's your motive for changing your prediction, then you lost the objectivity of it. But anyways, I understand where you're coming from as well. Inter did not give Barcelona a good day. So Man City Galatasaray, not an easy fixture. We know Manchester City have struggled in recent times, although they managed to recover over the weekend with that victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 2-0. Omar Mamouche among the goal scorers, and Anton Semenyo, who scored one and also hit the frame. Beautiful game of football for Manchester City, back to winning ways. Unfortunately for them, they've not yet registered McKay, because they can only, I think, register him for the knockout stages. So that means we could see a backline that has Nathan Ake, that has Quinton Kushanov or Max Alenya, Rico Lewis. I do not think we'll see Rico Lewis. I think we'll see Matthias Nunes, and then maybe Nico O'Reilly. The midfield will be without Rodrigo Cascante because that one will be out through suspension following his red card against Bodo Glimt. So that means we could see perhaps the return of Nico Gonzalez in that midfield, provided he's fit. If he's absent through injury, then expect Jan Riendas to be playing in that deep lying role there. And then, of course, they expect to see Bernardo Silva maybe alongside Phil Foden, Ryan Chucky, Jeremy Doku, Brad Erling Haaland, of course, leading the lines and things like that. So with Gianluigi Donnarumma in goal. And then on the side of Galatasaray, we know that Victor Osimhen will be available to torment any defense that he does come across. There's a player called Yunus Agun, shirt 11 from Galatasaray. He's one of those players who I've not watched so much of, but I've really, really appreciated. Then Lucas Torreira in midfield, Mario Lemina maybe, or Ilkay Gundogan, depending on who is available. Davinson Sanchez in that back line. We'll have to wait and see. But Galatasaray are not an easy team. What will encourage Manchester City, or what gives them the edge in this particular fixture, is the fact that they are at home. Otherwise, had they been away to Turkey, then would be possibly talking about a very, very different game in that context. You say, I learn ceteris paribus in economics. I have microeconomics. You have macroeconomics, microeconomics. It is a Latin phrase for all factors remaining the same. All factors kept constant over a period of time when making a theory. Yeah, indeed. As I also bring it henceforth as a former economics student, I did my economics in 2010 and 2011. That's a period of time. Anyways, so yeah, for the game between Manchester City and Galatasaray, I'm going to go with a draw. I'm going to go Man City to Galatasaray 2. So it's a draw for me. Man City draw. And I'm saying 2-2. What's your prediction for that game, Pedri, between Manchester City and Galatasaray before we move on to the fixture between Real Madrid and Benfica? That's between Jose Mario Felix Mourinho against his former side, Real Madrid. You're saying Manchester City win 2-1. Wow. I hope you won't gloat too much when you win so many of these predictions. Anyways, so Real Madrid, these guys painted themselves in such a brilliant picture in their recent win against AC Monaco, which they followed up with a less beautiful win over the weekend. Kylian Mbappe scoring a brace in that one of them being a penalty in their game over the weekend. Well, I'm trying to remember who they were playing against. Jesus Christ. Is my memory that bad? You say late winner, Ryan Chucky, 93rd minute. Okay. All right. Hopefully it goes down that way. So, yeah. Real Madrid also have that new manager bounce following the sacking of Xabi Alonso and Alvaro Arbeloa being named as interim head coach. I get extra points if it happens. No, there are no extra points. Anyways, so you have, I don't know, he seems to have, the game against AC Monaco was typical Real Madrid football. I remember saying this, using those words, when Man United beat up against Manchester City, to say Carrick had gotten United back to default settings to play in a typical Manchester United way. So when I saw Real Madrid versus Monaco, I was like, this is typical Real Madrid. Counter-attacking football, when you win the ball back, quick transitions, and on you go at goal. The opponent's box is always the destination, nothing like recycling the ball and things like that. So against Benfica, I do not expect the blueprint to be very, very different. However, they should expect to find a very conservative team, maybe not as conservative as traditional Jose Mourinho, but conservative to some level, because he will know the threat that Vinicius Junior poses, Kylian Mbappe, Franco Masantuano, maybe Adagula, in addition to that in that midfield playing as a 10 with Jude Bellingham the 8 alongside Eduardo Camavinga, Alvaro Carreras, Dean Howson, Raul Asensio, Fede Valverde, and Thibaut Courtois. Alvaro Carreras facing his former bosses. On the side of Benfica, I think Kenan Yildiz is sorry, not Kenan Yildiz. Kenan Yildiz plays for Juventus. It is Pavlidis, yes. Pavlidis is the guy to watch. Then Leandro Bereiro. Again, Benfica do not have a pool of so many stars. Not that I ever watch them consistently or week in, week out. My following of them is usually in the UEFA Champions League. So it's not to say that I can give you much deeper insights regarding to their overall playing style and things like that. What I can give you is what I expect from the head coach or the manager in Jose Mourinho, how he would want his teams to play, to be difficult to break down, and then leverage on moments, and then win a game of football. And they will also know that if they win that game, then they have a chance to advance to the playoffs there for Benfica. Nonetheless, I expect both teams to score in that game. However, I don't know. I have this feeling that Real Madrid could go away and win by 2-1. So I'm going for a Real Madrid win. Real Madrid to win by 2-1. 2-1. What's your prediction for that game, Pedri? Before we sign out tonight, because this is our final game that we're previewing, and we'll leave the balance of it for tomorrow morning. Give us your prediction for for Benfica versus Real Madrid. And please disabuse yourself of all the biases that you have against Real Madrid. I knew that was coming. You said Benfica 3-1 Real. I am 100% confident. The only thing you're 100% confident of is you watching at least 2 of those fixtures tomorrow. Otherwise, guys, it's been a pleasure doing this with you guys. I would love us to continue with this sort of engagement. Thank you so much for those of you that have been part of the broadcast. Leo Wallen, thank you so much for the love and support. We did not touch Liverpool, but if you do find the time, we'll be here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. That means 7 a.m. UK time. 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. Oh, okay. We'll push it to about 9:30 there, so that people can wake up for the broadcast. Anyways, so thank you so much, Leo Wallen. Thank you so much, Rodom. Thank you so much, Muhammad. Thank you so much, Amlen Presinkosi. Presinkosi is an Arsenal fan. Amlen is a Liverpool fan. And to you, Pedri, for all your wonderful contributions towards this broadcast tonight. It's always a pleasure to have this engagement with you. You say, I have my iPad, a phone, laptop, TV ready, so I can watch 4 games at least tomorrow. Unfortunately for me, I only have my phone and my computer. So I'll only have to maybe watch at most 3 games. I'll keep tabs on 3 games at most. Particularly, of course, I want where the gist is. I want to watch the PSG game, PSG Newcastle. Something tells me I should keep my other eye on Dortmund versus Inter, but I also want to watch the Arsenal game. I want to watch the Madrid game. I literally want to watch them all. But let's see how things boil down to tomorrow. Maybe, because I always want to watch Barcelona to see how Rashford fares, to see how, poorly they defend sometimes. Because the reason as to why I want to watch some of those teams is the anticipation that either Arsenal or Real Madrid could meet them at the later stages of the competition. So, you say Okay, you say, by the way, Mr. Tribe, we didn't have Lamin versus Slavia Praha. He's now back. He was suspended. Yeah, that's true. I'm joking. I'll only watch Barcelona. I'll just check scores on the BBC football. All right. It's been a pleasure doing this with you for the last 1 hour and almost at 10 minutes. Thank you so much for always taking the time to be with us on our respective broadcasts. Thank you so much for the love and support. Continue supporting, continue watching, and hopefully we'll hit up on those numbers, on those milestones that we are trying to push down to so that I can put mechanisms for membership, so that I can put mechanisms for donations to the channel, and people help support the community to grow. You know, I even laugh at my team. You say, Mr. Tribe, just stay. You want to watch us because our defense is a circus. We have the elephant Kunde, baby Kubasi. Let me tell you something, Pedri. I said this in a TikTok forum that I was having an engagement with earlier on today. Sometime in the earlier mid hours of the afternoon. I said this about Barcelona. Their defense isn't without quality, but it's largely how they apply themselves in their overall system that then tends to affect that sort of that makes them to be a bad defense, and they end up conceding so many goals. It's less about the actual talent within those individual players, but rather the system that they deploy. And I was saying of how rare a clean sheet comes for Barcelona. Really, over the weekend they had one against, was it Sociedad in that 3-0 victory? So yeah, really, that's how I look at it. You say, okay, Elephant Kunde, Baby Kubasi, Indian Eric Garcia, Batman Balde. By the way, I do not think Balde should be a defender. He reminds me of a young Nelson Semedo when he was coming up at Barcelona. They want to be forward, Emerson Royal, I think, also. Those kinds of players, they are defenders, but they want to be up front there. Marcelo kind of player, they like to dribble. They're confident of themselves in terms of their, hold up play. They're confident of the ball and things like that. So I do have a feeling that another manager would have no problem testing out Balde in a forward position. He's one of those players that I do enjoy watch to play on a given day when he's having a good day in office. So yeah, that's it for my part. Anyways, Pedri, I know we can have this discussion for forever, but allow me wrap it up here because it's midnight here, and I wish you a blessed night. Let's catch up tomorrow for another conversation. Otherwise, keep watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now. Stay blessed and have a good night.